Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this and where you're watching this. This is the third episode of A Conversation. I'm Frank Boettcher, a videographer and DP based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Today, I am lucky enough to have a experienced Emmy Award-winning producer-director with 150 documentaries and films under his belt. And we're going to have a conversation today with Steve Boettcher. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Frank, how are you? You're like the Jimmy Fallon of Facebook, man.
He's my worst favorite. I don't like Jimmy Fallon. Could you give me...
Sorry for that reference.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
We don't feel that way about you, just to let you know.
Yeah, they feel a lot worse about me. So how you holding up with everything?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I got to say, this is an awesome idea to kind of like connect our production community together and a chance to kind of listen and hear from everybody. And awesome job. Great idea.
Well, I appreciate it, Steve, and it's fun. You know, it's just fun to kind of get to know everybody a little bit better. And I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, but you know, there's things you talk about and things you don't talk about. And today, let's see if we can dig a little deeper into some of that stuff. So I want to ask you. You know, it's funny. I know a little bit about your background out of news and things like that, but you know, how did you get where you are? And you know, this doesn't have to be give me the Reader's Digest to this thing, okay?
Yeah. You know, I met my business colleague Mike Trinkline at Oshkosh, and we kind of had this idea that we wanted to do long form content, films, documentaries, history films, science films. We really wanted to provide programs to national and international outlets. That was kind of the idea in college. So we kind of packed our suitcases, and he went off to teach at a university and develop a film program. I went off to local news, and you kind of pack your suitcase every day at work at these places to learn more about the craft and how to tell a story, whether it's in news. I later broke out of news and started my own TV production company and did tons of corporate projects and corporate films. And I think every day you kind of learn when you're working with a DP or an editor or another producer or whatever, you just kind of learn the craft slowly over years.
And Steve, let me ask you this, because you know, if you know a little bit about my background, I mean, I ran the video department for U.S. Bank, which was at one time First Wisconsin Bank and First Star. And I did that for about 18 years with a studio. And my impetus to come out and kind of do other things was, at the time, they wanted me to move to Minnesota. They wanted me to go to Minneapolis. And nothing against Minneapolis, but it's cold enough in Wisconsin, so I didn't need to do that.
Absolutely.
What was your impetus of why did you get out of news, and what took you in that direction?
You know, first of all, I worked with great people at Channel 4. I loved them, and I learned at their feet, truly, and just how to tell a story, how to craft it. I think I'd grown to the point where I wanted to tell my own stories, and I wanted to kind of shape my own stories and not always do that in a news voice, I guess. So I really kind of wanted to move on. And I'll tell you, over the years, we're certainly not the best producers or shooters or editors. But we've had a laser focus on distribution. How do you create a program that gets out into the main channel, broadcast or streaming or whatever? And that was really, I think, our laser focus from the beginning.
Well, I tell you, Steve, and that, I think, I know the importance of that. I think that's amazing. But I will tell you, in the programs I've seen that you've produced and put together, they're great. I mean, there are pieces out there that I see on HBO and I see on Netflix and whatever, and I start watching them and go, how the heck did this even get distribution? It's horrible. Your stuff, no matter if you're talking about contacts you've made and things like that, are great, but your product is amazing. Your product is really good stuff.
Well, so you're the one that's watching. I really appreciate that, man. I really do.
So let's talk then. Let's talk about, so how did you get, now one of the things you're known for, and I know you've done a ton of work, and you and I have even worked together on a few projects. But how did you get to the pioneer thing? I mean, that's kind of a real kind of well-known piece that ended up on PBS. Tell me a little bit about the growth of that and the experience of doing that, would you?
Yeah, certainly. Pioneers of television is probably the thing we're known for. It's kind of got that celebrity appeal, and I think that's part of the reason it gains a lot of attention, and which is great. It started out really as an idea of doing a film on vaudeville, and quickly talking to distribution outlets, it was too old. The idea couldn't be a series. The vaudeville idea was old and dead, much like vaudeville. So when we're talking to distributors and programmers, they said, hey, what about television, early television, the people that kind of established early TV? Why don't you do something and make a series out of that? So that was kind of the idea. And it was a simple idea. Like, we wanted not to talk to like the second AD on season 3 of a program, but we wanted to talk to the celebrities that were kind of there and built the program. And we wanted kind of the frontline celebrities, if you will, that kind of created early television. So we started on this quest of interviewing like 300 different TV stars from the early days of TV's 60s, 70s, and 80s, pretty much.
Yeah, and and you've kind of really done a great job of cultivating that out into. I know you did the, and we're looking at a clip right now, and I think this is from maybe the comedians piece, but you've done like the first people that were comedians, the people that were late night, and all that, and you've kind of really expanded that out, which I think is really genius because I've seen a bunch of them, and there really are some great niches to be able to hold on to or to grab onto. But when you first came up with that idea, it sounds like a great idea, but I think most people would come up with that idea and go, "Yeah, it's a great idea, but how the hell do I
Oh
do
yeah.
this? How do I get to celebrities? How is anybody going to listen to me?
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, my God, the amount of work in contacting people and doing all of that. How did you accomplish all of that?
Yeah, it sounds like a really easy premise. Let's interview a bunch of celebrities and let's use their clips from their television shows, put it all together, and we'll package it. Well, even learning how to license footage, like when you're talking to William Shatner, you have to see Star Trek. When you're talking to Jerry Seinfeld, you got to see Seinfeld clips, and just how to navigate all that and hundreds of shows and rights and clearance and getting the stars to agree. We didn't pay stars to be interviewed. So getting them to agree to be on the show and be interviewed, and it was like one foot in front of the other the entire time, really.
Yeah, when I think of that, I just think about it, almost insurmountable to try to get that all done. But kudos to you, man.
What's
That's
fascinating is like I think the industry is kind of like a high school. It's actually pretty small. I think we all know that too from our own community here, where we live and work. It's a small community in LA, and it's a certain number of agents and certain number of managers. And when you get them behind you, they are very agreeable. And it just happened to be, and I think maybe partly that Midwest work ethic that we all have,
uh,
and maybe trusting us and allowing us to tell that story was something that just, it seemed to kind of like, the first season was hard. The second season, the third season, the fourth season got a lot easier getting people. And then we kind of went by genre, and then we kind of created formula shows like Funny Ladies, all the funny women that created television. And then we did an episode on sitcoms or stand up to sitcom, where it's all the comedians that got their own TV shows, the Jerry Seinfeld, the Ray Romanos, Tim Allen, Bob Newhart, Roseanne Barr, all those people that, kind of came out of a stand-up career. So that was one premise of one of the shows.
well, that's great. And from the standpoint of too, what did you was there any points or anything you used to leverage? I guess I think of when you're doing something like this, it's almost like a history archive, right? That
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get, and you want to get these people, and not to be morbid, but before they pass away and before they're gone, you'd love to get these things,
yeah.
get them on tape talking about their careers and what's going on. Did you leverage that at all, or what did you use for
Yeah,
leverage?
I think, yeah, that's part of it. We also, when we sat down with people, we would do extended interviews about their entire career. So not just a niche, but their entire career. But I was just thinking when you said that, we wanted to interview Sigourney Weaver. Her dad created Late Night for NBC and also the morning show for NBC. And we wanted Sigourney to talk about her father. And Sigourney is a big star. I mean, she's a big deal. So, but she was just more excited to talk about her dad than anything. And getting that interview we found a sweet spot for her to talk about her father and what he meant to the industry. So I think we just tried to find points where people understood what we were doing and connected to it.
Yeah. And was there as far as getting we've talked about the logistics of getting that all set up, and what about getting somebody to back you on this stuff? Are you grant writing, or what are you doing? And for somebody out there who has an idea like yours, right?
Yeah.
And says, okay, now where do I start? What can I do, or to get backing, or to get to get something behind me to get this thing off the ground?
That's a great question. Yeah. Man, every project's kind of unique to itself, but
Sure.
like with Pioneers, it was fully funded by PBS, and it was considered a tent pole show where they really create a opportunity to raise the tent and bring people underneath the tent. That's is a tent pole show, and it's high profile. In their mind, it's high profile. So you have like Ryan Seacrest is a narrator of one of the seasons, and they want high profile show. That's what they wanted. They funded it. But along the way with Pioneers, we met Betty White. We interviewed her, and Betty was kind of at that time more of a ensemble player. And all of a sudden, about in the early 90s, her career kind of like, she got the Snickers commercial. She got a Facebook campaign to push her to be a host of SNL. And all of a sudden, Betty became this iconic star. And we thought, man, we got to circle back with Betty. And I want to do a profile on Betty. We couldn't wait for funding, so we self-funded it. Everybody loved the idea, but we couldn't wait. So we self-funded that project and took it to Netflix, and they paid for it. And but every project's kind of unique to itself, and it's like a lot of us, I think the tools now are cheap enough that we can kind of start projects, you know, in this day and age for all of us, that we have the tools. It's just kind of moving yourself and dedicating time to the project and pushing forward, I guess.
Gotcha. I'm rolling a little piece of the Betty White documentary, which, I've given you kudos on that. I think it was just amazing. And, and just from a personal interest standpoint, how was it working with Betty? I mean, was it as pleasant as it seems? Is it genuine?
Oh, yeah. She's exactly what you see is what you get. But I'll tell you, the hard part of it, too, is kind of you're going into a room to pitch the idea to an agent, her manager, her assistant, her executive secretary, and she's in the room. And you got to sizzle up this idea of, hey, I want to follow you around for the next 2.5, 3 years, film everything you do. We're not going to pay you, but it's going to be a great project, you know, and you got to come, and the agent's thinking one thing, because this is how they make a living. Sure. Betty's thinking another one, and the ability to leave that room and kind of have a project sold, if you will, and having them support the project. And I mean, they opened their Rolodex to all her friends, whether it's a Ryan Reynolds or it was Valerie Bertinelli or Jennifer Love Hewitt. They opened the Rolodex for me to be able to interview her friends, and to kind of have that kind of love and support from them. Man, that I was worried for 2 weeks about that meeting and going in there and trying to sell them an idea that we thought was of value.
Well, it's a great program, and I'm glad it got on Netflix, so it has the exposure it has.
Yeah, thanks, man.
But it's a great show. So tell me that, and you've kind of alluded to this a little bit, that like with the Pioneers, you got the thing for Betty. Where do you come up with the idea, Steve? Where do you come up with the idea that we should do this or that, or what is it? Is it kind of a transitional, or not transitional, I guess. Is it pop in from, you're working on one project and you're thinking maybe we go down this road or whatever? What's kind of like your your way of generating ideas and coming up with show segments, or what you're thinking of doing next?
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, I think the first challenge that we have is like, all right, I know it's going to be a year or two on something, and I better love this topic or love this idea from the beginning all the way to the end. If I don't love it and feel passion for it, I don't want to do it. It might be able to sell it, but I don't want to do it. So we kind of find projects that we fall in love with. We try to find where we meet the audience, who the outlet is. And we've done history shows. We've done sports programs. We've done, I always want to do a nature film. We've done nature films. And so we always kind of first find a passionate idea and then try to find an outlet that would pay for it. And the trick is, to me, is finding distribution and also creating a business model that people are willing to pay and support your business, and make it a project or an effort that is sustainable. And so I guess we've been really fortunate in that space, and that's really, Mike Trinkland and I, we started very early on, 20 years ago, going to independent producers conferences, meeting distributors, meeting networks, meeting executives. All these executives move around. We keep track of them. And it all starts with like relationships first. You don't go into a Netflix meeting and pitch them an idea. You start with a friendship, a relationship, and start talking about something you're working on, and then you pitch them. So it's kind of like developing a relationship along the way, much like life is, I guess.
Gotcha. Hey,
Yeah.
so I'm got a little clip here that I'm playing that with this outdoor piece, the
Yeah.
Frozen Chosen. Tell me a little bit about this because I know nothing about this.
Okay. Well, so the idea was like, I think, you know, all of us kind of have little pet projects in our world and something we want to do. And I've always loved doing a nature film. We've done some out west. And I always think you have to go to the Galapagos Islands to film turtles or go to the South Pole and film penguins. This is a film that was done, on Lake Winnebago. It's the only place in the globe that does this. Spearing sturgeon 3 weeks out of the year. And the film's called The Frozen Chosen. The idea was, can I shoot this all one-man band? No audio person, no lighting people, no grip. And even like you'll see driving shots in the film where literally I'm driving with my foot and shooting the wheel, the driver's side wheel, going through the ice and snow. And it was just more like a personal challenge. And this actually went to Netflix. And when you pitch an East Coast or a West Coast outlet, this is a program that travels around the globe easily. It's people spearing for livelihood and for food. Well, in China, they understand that. In Europe, they understand that. It's an easy premise to sell. Man versus nature, And that was the idea of The Frozen Chosen. And I also I didn't have to travel, like 2 hemispheres away to kind of do this or whatever. It was in our own backyard. So we always don't have to go and create, tons of effort and cost to create a film that's in our own backyard.
Well, that's pretty cool. I was looking at was watching the clip where you're talking, and for you doing that all by yourself, that's kind of what I do every day. But the one man band thing, but it's some great footage. You got some great shots in there, some really really cool stuff. How long did that take?
I actually it took me 2 seasons. It's only in February. It happens 3 weeks in February, and it's basically like you're cutting a hole the size of a big screen TV and sliding a shanty over it, and you're looking down into like static, a television static. The odds of seeing a fish is 7%. The odds of getting a fish are less.
Yeah. So
I sat there for hours and days and days and days waiting, and you don't have a film unless you get someone getting a fish. I mean, that's really, that's the goal. And they believe there's a 300-pounder in that lake somewhere that someone's going to get someday. So it's kind of a character-driven piece. I found a family on the East Coast and the West Coast of the lake. They hate each other's sides, and it's kind of like driven by people and personalities and that kind of stuff. So, it's beyond just a fish story, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat this to death, but it's now you sparked my interest in this. So when you're out there, what were you telling them what you were doing? Kind of like, I'm doing this, and I'm going to try to get it on Netflix. I'm going to do this, or what was the response? I mean, these guys are out there and they're serious about their fishing, and you got some Yahoo out there with a camera going, "Hey, I want to take your picture while you're catching a fish." It's like, "Hey, get out of here, buddy. I don't need, I didn't need you." What was the response?
I had to take both families to a Friday fish fry and pay for it, and talk about the idea and talk them into it. And they're kind of like really close families, close knit families. They don't need a guy with a camera shooting all their conversations and language, and what happens on the ice stays in the ice, kind of a thing. But they were great. I got really close to these families, and just kind of developed, what it's like, I guess, in the business where you kind of go beyond just being a working relationship. It's almost like a friendship at some point. And I think they started trusting me more and more, getting to know me more and more, and opened up about their life. And this is the high point of their life. I mean, literally, this is like beyond anything they do all year long. So it's a big deal.
And, at the beginning when we were talking, you're not the best producer. That is a great producer. I mean, if you're doing that and you're building those relationships and doing that, I think that's being a great producer.
Well, and I think it's, like we all kind of do too, I think in our business, it's finding like something quirky too. Like there's a radio station on Lake Winnebago that does sturgeon spearing reports. They play 3 polkas, and then they have a sturgeon, like Jim on the north side got a 125-pounder. Jim, way to go. You got a gift certificate, to have your sump pump, cleaned out. And then I went to the radio station and found this guy that was playing polkas and giving a sturgeon spearing report for the lake. And I thought, okay, this is like, you couldn't make this up. It was so awesome.
Well, and the cool thing is too, it's not like you're some guy from California or New York coming in and doing this. Hey, I'm from Wisconsin. Were you originally? Are you from Green Bay? Where'd
I'm
you
from
live?
Appleton. Yeah,
Appleton.
Appleton area.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, it is basically kind of your neighborhood. So that's got to help
yeah.
a little bit too. Say I'm from here, and you know about it, or you're not coming in as this big wig producer guy saying, hey, let me make fun of you guys, or let me show everybody how what
Well,
you are.
that's
But
so true. This is, yeah, I live here. This is my state. I don't want to make fun of our state. And there's also different. Like, there's the families you got to kind of keep happy. This is a DNR success story. Lake Winnebago. They brought this fish back from extinction, and it is thriving. And this sport is thriving. So you got to kind of keep the DNR happy, and the communities. And it's kind of like a careful play game, I guess, trying to keep everyone happy with the
and
film.
Steve, what was the pitch to Netflix on that?
Again, it was like when you're in, you know, Los Angeles, and you're explaining this to someone that has only lived in Los Angeles, and these guys do what? I mean, and it was a simple, easy pitch of this is the only place in the globe this happens, and they couldn't believe. And I had some rough footage that I showed them. I'm kind of big on showing like maybe a sizzle reel when I go in and talk to people about stuff, and
Sure.
just give them enough to get the idea of the concept. So that was kind of the pitch to them.
Interesting. So let's talk about you've done what 150, I think, is whatever 150 different programs. Is there a favorite? Is there one? And I know this has got to be tough, right? For all different reasons, you're going to have something that's favorite. But is there a favorite one that you've worked on, and when you finish it? I mean, I know I'm just a shooter now, but I used to produce and I used to direct.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd finish something up, and you go. You'd always finish, and you're always like, I could have done that a little different, whatever. But then there's a couple you finish, and you go, that was pretty good. That couldn't be much better. Is there one for you like that you
No,
go, no, you still?
I'll tell you, you're just really critical. I mean, I'm always kind of
Yeah.
really critical, and I don't really spend a lot of time looking in the mirror back. Really, I'm just not that kind of personality, I guess.
But you can learn from that, right? I mean, that's
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I value the relationships we've developed with some people like a Betty White, and we talk to them. And just maybe some of those relationships along the way, I really value that we become very close. I go out to Los Angeles and have dinner with friends from the shows that we've done and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
that's probably. But like this year, we have 3 shows we've distributed in the first quarter of 2020. We have another show coming out. We have a Milwaukee-based film coming out about the DNC, Milwaukee, the convention coming up. We have a History of Milwaukee national project coming out that's about the politics of Milwaukee. It's actually kind of fascinating. And we're working on another architectural show for the fall. So we're kind of like continue to stay in the, looking down the road, I guess.
Sure. So, okay, I asked you about favorites of what they were, but what about favorite ones to work on? What about, I mean, you've done so many, and and as far as celebrities go and outside of celebrities and whatever, is there a favorite one like, oh my God, this was just like a joy to do?
Yeah, we did one. We did the Legend of Lambeau Field. I think just as Wisconsinites, we did the Legend of Lambeau Field film, and kind of captured a moment in history for that organization. The team trusted us telling their story, and that was it's like the Favre eras and the Bart Starr eras and those kind of things. I'm not a huge sports fan, but that was pretty special, I guess, especially because of the state that we live in. So that would probably be one, I guess. And sometimes the small little quirky films like The Frozen Chosen is really special to me. It's just kind of some of the relationships you develop along the way and friendships. That one's really special to me as well.
Well, let's flip the coin then, and you don't have to name names or anything. But what about on the other side? Is it the one that, man, you got through it and went, I am so glad this is in the can and done. This was tough. It was difficult. And I'm glad we came out the other side.
I think sooner or later, all projects kind of get there and you go like, okay, I've seen this enough times that I can't watch this. It must be cooked and done with now, that we just have to like birth this thing and get it done and out, where all projects kind of get to that point where you just kind of like, I can't watch this thing anymore. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. And then you kind of go back and watch it maybe 2 years later and you go, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought, or it's smoother than I thought it was. But yeah, there's certainly those projects that are a little bit, you can't wait to kind of be done with them, So, and I'll tell you, The Pioneers of Television was something that, I mean, we lived with that show for 6, 7, 8 years before it ever got on the air, and just doing interviews and trying to get it. And it wasn't a natural sell to anyone. And just trying to kind of get somebody to see vision and see what could be. And it was a time you couldn't do the show today because all these stars are dead now. I mean, literally pretty much of them are dead now. So you couldn't do it. And like when we were doing stand up to sitcom, we're interviewing all the stand up comedians, Robin Williams and Jerry Seinfeld and Tim Allen and Ray Romano. And then, Robin came in San Francisco. We did an interview with him. And it was about a 4-hour interview.
Wow.
And it's his whole entire life. And then he passes away like a month later.
Yeah.
And it was 2014, and the news was shocking. And then we realized we have his entire life story and his last interview.
Wow.
So we quickly rolled it into a program called Robin Williams Remembered. I went to Los Angeles the next morning, went to the Comedy Store, and we did interviews with all his friends on the X on the stage of the Comedy Store where Robin started his career.
Great idea. Yeah.
So you get all his comedian friends to come in, and I'll tell you, it's right on the surface that day because it just happened the day before.
Yeah.
So everybody's in tears, and everybody came to be interviewed and be part of it and kind of unite together. We hard drived a program, footage back to Milwaukee, cut it, and we had it on the air in like a few days later.
Not fortunate under the guise of Robin Williams passing away, but how fortunate that you got that interview with him and were able to archive that and do that. And how was he then, Steve? Did you notice anything how do you? He was such a high energy guy. When he was on camera,
he came in the chair kind of slouched.
Yeah.
And then slowly worked his way, kind of engaged, and he was awesome. He's kind of all over the map, so you don't really know what's normal, I guess.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Well, 4 hours. I'm thinking, how do you spend 4 hours with that guy and not be exhausted, right?
It was like, like we're running out of ammunition. We keep loading cards in and keep like loading, and it's like,
yeah.
I'm out. You know what I mean? You keep like loading footage into the camera to kind of get everything he's saying. And then at the end of the day, we went into the makeup area. He was getting his makeup taken off. I went in and we kind of put our feet up on the makeup table. And the two of us just like talked over beer. And it was just kind of like just two buddies kind of having that conversation, talk about the business and people we've met, people he knew, people we knew together. And it was like a great moment. And then to hear him, what happened was tragic.
And did you feel like in your one-on-one time with him, was it a different person than he is when he's...
Yeah, he was even when he came in, he's much lower key and much more, reserved, I guess. And with this film, like we thought we got to get Pam Dauber, who was with him on his
Mark
series.
And Mindy, right? Yeah.
Mark and Mindy, very good. And we called her up, I think that morning, and she had been asked by Entertainment Tonight, the morning shows, to be interviewed. She said no to everybody. We talked, and she said, Steve, I'd love to, but I just don't feel comfortable. And I'm like, I totally understand. If you don't want to do it,
sure.
You shouldn't do it. I mean, if you feel this way, don't do it. And we hung up, and she showed up 2 hours later at the Comedy Store and said, just because you told me not to do it, I thought I would do this one. And it's like, kind of like, who would have known, and she went on and did other interviews after, but
sure.
She was the first one she talked to, just because I think also that maybe that Midwest kind of like not be pushy and I was sincere. I meant it. Don't do the interview. Then I agree with you,
Yeah. Yeah. You respected her feelings and that basically gave her the impetus to come forward, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up here shortly, but I want to know what's the future. You told me a couple of things that you have coming out. What's kind of, you got other things in the works that you can tell us about, or?
Yeah. We sent an email to Netflix this morning. We're still like working, we're pitching. I think for us, we've always tried to, how do you transition to executive producing ideas? How do you find a producer? We've tried it a couple times with producers we like, taking their idea, trying to help them get their show on the air. And it's never seemed to quite work out. I don't know why. I think that's something we really kind of want to do more of. We have the connections. We know where the revenue is to do this. We could help somebody take their idea and take it to the next level. I think our second goal is we're working on a drama, multiple part drama that we've already scripted. We're kind of working on that and maybe turning the corner from a documentary type work to more of a drama. That's that's an idea we're kind of cooking on right now.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
we still got gas in the tank, man. We still got gas. We're not hanging up.
No, no, you're not slouching.
Yeah.
All right, well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It was a
Thanks,
lot of
man.
fun to learn a little bit about what's going on and get some background, and just to spend some time with you. You and I
Yeah.
have known each other for years and years, and
Yeah, no doubt.
I hate that it's quarantine and a COVID thing that brings us together to be able to have some time. But thank God we have some time to
Yeah.
do it, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. Best to everybody too, man. Hang in there, and we're gonna get back to some normalcy someday. And we just can't wait for that, I guess.
I'm with you. Thanks again, Steve. And
Thanks for doing this too.
all
Thank
right,
you.
you're very welcome. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Be well. Take care.
Take care, my friend.
All right, bye bye.
Well, everybody, that was session 3 with Steve Boettcher. We really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be doing more of these. I've got some other guests coming down the line, so stay tuned, and we will see you next time for a conversation.